26 minutes to 1 o'clock on Alberta at Noon. As you've been hearing in the news, new research sponsored by the CBC shows that Canadians believe immigrants are just as likely to be good citizens as people who are born here. The CBC, along with 4 other organizations, commissioned what's believed to be the largest poll ever conducted on citizenship in Canada. It's also one of the very few to define what it means to be a good Canadian citizen. 2,376 adults were surveyed between November 18th and December 17th for this poll, and what they said may surprise you. Turns out, we believe that being a good citizen means more than having a passport, obeying the law, and paying taxes. It means being active in your community and volunteering as well. Do you agree with that? What do you think makes a good Canadian citizen? What made you decide to become a Canadian citizen? Give us a call at 1-866-468-4422. That's 1-866-468-4422. Send an email to alberta@noon@cbc.ca or a tweet to alberta@noon.cbc. My guest today is Fariborz Birjandian. He's the Executive Director of the Calgary Catholic Immigration Society. Hello, Fariborz. Thanks for joining us.
Good afternoon, Donna. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, it's great to have you here, and I was wondering what your overall impression was of what the Environics poll came up with.
There were no surprises for me. Actually, I felt that when it comes to immigrants coming to Canada, they needed to go through a personal journey because it takes about a few years to come to Canada, and obviously the years that they have to wait to apply for citizenship. And I know the individual and the family, that question is always at the table when they talk about it and when they become Canadian citizen. I think that's the process. However, they go also through a mental journey of understanding the environment and try to find a place for themselves, a sense of belonging, and develop social capital. As a result, and I'm actually very impressed with the result because it says that 88% of new Canadian, they feel very proud Canadian compared to 82% of born Canadians. So that actually, it shows the value that immigrants put on their citizenship and becoming part of this great country.
It's also fascinating, too, that the finding that almost 90% of Canadians believe that immigrants are just as likely to be good citizens as Canadian-born people.
I think that's another indication that the whole immigration, settlement integration is working in this country, and I think we should be very happy with it because that question may not be answered the same way in other countries, as we know that, European countries, even other countries, that they bring a number of immigrants. I think the whole notion of citizenship, immigration, is also about this nation building. It's always been about nation building, and sometimes we shy away from it, but it is the reality. Yes, we bring immigrants to address some short-term labor issues that we have, but the reality is they are going to stay here, they're going to become your neighbor, they're going to become your classmate and your relative at the end of the day. So obviously that nation building has worked in Canada, and the statistics shows that, and I'm very happy with it.
1-866-468-4422. Fariborz Birjandian is the Executive Director of the Calgary Catholic Immigration Society. What do you think makes a good Canadian citizen? And we'd love to hear your stories. Maybe you're a newcomer who chose Canada. How difficult was it for you to embrace Canada as your new homeland? 1-866-468-4422. Send an email to alberta@noon@cbc.ca or a tweet to alberta@noon.cbc. And by the way, the Environics poll is considered accurate to 2 percentage points, 19 times out of 20. Fariborz, you were talking about the psychological journey of leaving your place of birth and where you grew up and where you were a citizen and making a new country your home. What was it like for you and your family leaving Iran and embracing Canada as your new country?
I think it's very interesting because we were a group of 5. It's my mother, 2 boys, small, 4 and 6, and my wife and myself. And I think what we have learned, we went through a different journey. Each of us, we went through a different journey. So it's very personal at the end of the day. I think we have to recognize this conversation should be happening more often in our communities. Just give you some numbers. When we bring 250,000 immigrants every year, and we know Canada has actually the highest number of immigrants that they become the citizen of the country, Canadian citizen. So every year we get about 212,000 new citizens in this country. So I really think this discussion, it is at the dinner table with the immigrants, but we have to bring in our community to understand what it is. What it takes for people to develop a sense of belonging. Very early stage of their arrival. I think how we can create that condition that people come here, we know they are here to stay. They want to become a good Canadian citizen, and how the community can approach the whole issue, hold the questions to make sure that happens.
And tell me about that, because obviously, people are coming for different reasons, and it would also include the refugee experience, I would imagine too. But how might that differ from the people who go through all of the waiting and the paperwork that it takes to actually get here in the first place?
Again, as I said, it's a very personal journey for people. Again, obviously, everybody goes through the Citizenship Immigration Canada process, but on a personal level, everybody goes through a different, and I think goes back to the reason that people choose to come to Canada. I mean, in many cases that I'm more familiar with the refugee, when you become a refugee, obviously a country gives you refuge, a safe place for your children. That's a whole different way of looking at your developing sense of belonging. The people, they come here because there's a job opportunity. Obviously, there are push factors that made them to leave the country that they were born and to come to Canada. They are also here, but the expectation might be different. The process, the length that they take for them to personally decide, okay, this is the country I want to die in. This is it. This is my country. I think that is a different process people go through.
And you're obviously very involved with helping people settle and make the country a home. What are some of the challenges for people in order to make that transition very effectively? Obviously, it is working globally across the country, it seems to anyway, but what are some of the big challenges that you face in trying to deliver the kind of experience that people need when they want to become Canadian citizens?
I'm glad you asked that question, because sometimes we feel that people are here, they should be very happy that we allow them to come to Canada, and I think that is the case. I'm not arguing that. However, we have to also recognize coming to Canada is not an easy process to start with. Coming in, settling in, feeling the sense of belonging, trying to feel that you're part of the community, it is a kind of a very complicated process. People take it for granted because they were born here, they never had a language problem, they never had social capital problem, they never had a connection networking problem. But when you come to a new country, you basically leave everything that is familiar, that you know, you're comfortable with behind, and you enter to a really new environment, the language, the cultures, the way we talk, the way we
the programs we watch on television.
So I think what we have done, I think my agency and all other agencies, we have tried to make it a community issue. So agencies like Calgary Catholic Immigration and other agencies, we are really an organization that will reflect the community's response to settlement integration. And there's a wide variety of programming available. Thanks to technology, people can get a lot of information before even they come to Canada. But once they're here, I would say 30-40% of them, they do fantastic. They need minimum help, and I think that is what we provide. But a good number of them, I would say 50%, they may need more help. Because, again, you have to recognize, coming to the city of Calgary, let's say family of 4, just to survive 1 month without income, it costs you about $3,000 to $4,000. And when people, they don't have that, you can imagine what kind of stress that can put on the family and the breadwinner. The people come here, they are qualified, they go through a process, but it's not easy. I mean, thanks to the good economy we have today in Calgary, actually it's getting easier for them. But in general, entering into a labor market is a challenge. Identifying people that they understand you, they give you space, they become your friend is a challenge. Recognition of foreign qualification is a challenge. So, again, although it's a challenge, that statistics shows that is working. So it's producing for everybody. Immigrants that they come here, the new Canadian, they're very proud to be here. And all the statistics also shows that it works for Canada. So at the agency I work with, we have 2,000 volunteers. So that basically reflects
2,000 volunteers.
Exactly.
Wow.
2,000 Calgarian. And I'm sure if you check with other agencies, they have similar numbers. So we are in a very good environment, and I think investment from government is coming too, and I think that's a good news as well. So I think when you look across the world, Canada is a place as a best practice, as a desirable practice that I'm sure a lot of other countries are looking at.
I'm in conversation with Fariborz Birjandian. He's the Executive Director of the Calgary Catholic Immigration Society. Today we're talking about the results of a significant sample of people's opinions across this country about what makes a good Canadian citizen, and that's what we want to hear from you. What do you think makes a good Canadian citizen? What makes a bad one? 1-866-468-4422. Tell us your story. Are you a newcomer who chose Canada? How difficult was it to embrace Canada as your new home? 1-866-468-4422. Send an email to alberta@noon@cbc.ca or a tweet to alberta@noon CBC. And Fariborz, I just, before we bring in our listeners to the conversation, I just want to ask you about some of the elements that you do think makes a good Canadian citizen. What does make a good Canadian from your estimation?
I think as the questions, I think they were obviously good questions to be asked. Obviously, obeying the law, making sure that you pay your taxes, you work hard, you be helpful to your neighbors, you participate in the community, you become part of the community. So I think all that makes a package. I think there's the Canadian core value, I call it. And I think most of that is international, really. It's a universal core value. Being fair, being just to people, respecting other ideas, giving space to everybody to raise their opinion. I think those are some of the things that in Canada, that's why I love to be in Canada, because this is a country that you can be yourself with the condition that you respect others. I think these are the core area that I would say that make a good Canadian citizen.
What was the moment for you that made you feel like a Canadian?
I think I give you the story. When I used to, because the agency I work, obviously in a different event we do all Canada. It took me 3-4 years to sing that the anthem as it is mine. It didn't happen the first day. It would not happen the first day. And I think it takes some time. For me, obviously, as a refugee, when I came to Canada, that was a moment that I said, my God, we're in a safe place. So that is something, again, I'm sure not everybody shares that, because not everybody come. Only 5% of people come through the refugee process. But there is a time that you feel this is a country that you're not going to go back. This is it. This is not, there's no other country. So I call actually other places that I was born the old country, and that is what it is to me. And I think people, they get to that point, I would say, yes, they are fully embracing the Canadian citizenship.
Fariborz Birjandian is the Executive Director of the Calgary Catholic Immigration Society. Are you a newcomer who chose Canada? Maybe you're somebody who's been here for a long time. What made you feel like a Canadian citizen? 1-866-468-4422. We want to hear your stories about why you chose Canada, and we want to hear from everybody about what you think makes a good Canadian citizen. 1-866-468-4422. Send an email to alberta@noon@cbc.ca or a tweet to alberta@noon.cbc. Let's go to Fort McMurray now and to Donald, who's on the phone. Hello, Donald. What would you like to say?
I'd like to say that what makes a good immigrant is when they come to Canada here and they give respect to the First Nations of Canada, the First Peoples.
Mm-hmm.
Because after the immigrants do come here, they're so disrespectful and rude to the First Nations that are here. And when they come to the airport, they're not even told about the First Nations. It's always the English and the French, but you don't hear about the First Nations. And when you go to an immigrant citizens, they don't talk about anything about the First Nations here.
That's an interesting experience that you are sharing there, Donald. How would you respond to Donald's point, Fariborz?
I'm so glad he brought that issue, because I think, again, 5 million Canadians are immigrants that they were born outside the country, so 1 out of 6. I think that is so important that for us to learn about the Aboriginal, the history of this country, the people lived here for many, many thousand years. I think we have been trying to, as an immigrant serving agency, have a relationship with the different Aboriginal organizations to bring that element into the learning. Unfortunately, I have to agree with Donald. It's not there. I mean, when you look at all the books that we give new Canadian to read, there's not much mention of the Aboriginal. And I personally believe we have to understand that, because there's a danger, because our children are going to become a decision making in this country, the new immigrants. And there is very little knowledge and very little understanding. And I think I want to tell Donald that some of us, we are raising the question. But is not. I mean, it has to be more systematic. It has to be part of orientation. It has to be part of the citizenship book. I mean, you have the citizenship test book. How many questions are they asking about the Aboriginal in this country? And that is extremely, extremely important question.
Thank you so much for raising that, Donald. Now we're going to McLennan, where Eckhart joins us on the line. Hi, Eckhart.
Hello, how are you today?
I'm fine, thank you. What do you think makes a good citizen, or what's your experience?
I've had a good experience in this country. I came to Canada 50 years ago as a single male, and I enjoyed being here. I do lots of volunteering in my town. I am also on town council, and I'm really active in our small town. And what really is nice for me, because most of my family was killed during the Second World War. I never had any uncles or such like. I came to Canada, and shortly after our marriage, my wife's parents died. So we didn't have any family at all. Now we have grandparents, we have grandchildren, we have a complete family again. And Canada has made it all possible for me, and it's nice.
Thank you very much for sharing that story.
Yes, that's why Canada is the second destination of choice for all the immigrants across the world. Obviously, United States is still the number one, but definitely Canada is a country that when you look at people that they are trying to get out of the country for a variety of reasons, they have Canada is always on the top of the, so good for Canadians.
Thank you, Eckhart. We appreciate that. Let's go now to David, who's on the line in Edmonton. Hi, David. Who do you think makes a good Canadian citizen, or what?
Well, Canada is an act of will. It isn't a natural country. People had to will it into existence and will it to continue to exist. So people who don't take the country for granted, first of all, and try to help it be at its best, useful to its citizens and useful to the rest of the world.
Thanks very much, David.
Yeah, I think that being concerned about the rest of the world, I think is the key message I think we just heard. I think we have a lot to contribute. I think the way we have lived here, I mean, look at the city of Calgary, 1 million people, over 1 million people. We come from almost 130 different countries, 150 different countries. I think this is an experience that the world is becoming smaller on a daily basis really needs to look at more carefully to see how these people live here. I mean, it's unbelievable that we have people in this city from 150 different countries, and they call Calgary home, and that's amazing.
It is amazing, and we are very grateful for that call, Lawton, David. And I would also love to hear from people who are newcomers or who are landed immigrants. Why do you want to be a Canadian? 1-866-468-4422. Here's a tweet from Hey Manny G, who says, respecting laws of this country. Okay, so he's answering the question, what makes a good Canadian citizen? He says, respecting laws of this country, which reflects what the poll said. He says, contributing to Canadian society through voting and volunteering.
Texas.
Yeah, and the third one, I love this one. He says, you got to drink Tim's coffee.
Oh, of course. No, that must be.
That definitely sounds Canadian to me. Thank you very much, Hey Manny G. And by the way, we are on Twitter, Alberta@Noon CBC, and our email address is alberta@noon@cbc.ca. Let's go now to Red Deer, where Gracie's on the line. Hi, Gracie. What do you think makes a good citizen?
I think a hard-working Canadian, like they were 50 years ago, is what's very important in our country. I think people that don't just know how to do anything useful and just suck off the government is a real problem for our country. And I think people have to realize that they have to get in the workforce and earn their living.
Thanks very much for that contribution. I mean, obviously, so many people come here are desperate to be working, and it's extremely... How difficult can it be for some people to get that first decent job, Fariborz?
Again, I think if you look at the numbers, I mean, the unemployment, at least in Alberta, for immigrants is quite reasonable. Even it could be even lower, unemployment rate could be lower than the mainstream population. So I think immigrants, they come here, and we all know the stories. I mean, when I came here myself, I used to go to work at 8 to 4, and then at 5 I used to manage a restaurant till 11:30, and that is the story of all the new first generation immigrants. I hope my kids have picked some of that work ethic, but this is actually one of the things immigrants bring to the country, the work ethic and that working hard, because they have to build from scratch, so they have to
that drive. Thank you very much. Yasim joins us on the phone now from Calgary. Hello, Yasim. What would you like to say?
Yes, hello?
Hi, Yasim. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Actually, I came here to Canada about 6 years ago. I came as a student. I want to just make a point here just before I want to share my experience.
Sure.
Well, I came when I was a little bit younger than normal landed immigrants. Like I came here when I was 20 years old. And this is actually makes it for me a lot easier for all the people that I met here in the country. So I feel really like I grew up in this country. I feel like my roots now is going there. Finally, like last year, I just got married with a Canadian woman.
Congratulations.
And, thank you. And this is just makes me feel like I'm contributing with the economy, with the daily life in Canada, actually. So I want to just share this. The age, actually, the age is very important. I would say very important point in when someone want to move to country to another. More you're older you are, more it's going to be difficult, actually.
Yeah, I think that would be the case for most people, and I mean, you must see that all the time as well, Fariborz.
I think an important point was raised. I think one of the good things about being Canadian is not very rigidly defined. I think it is a little bit wide open, so you can define it yourself. I think there are core values, and there are some characteristics that people have they responded to the survey, like being fair, like being just, like being contributing to the community, local community, even to the to the world. But definitely, it is a personal experience again. It goes back to how people individually do that. The opportunity is there for people to participate. I mean, look at even in Calgary. I mean, for the past 20 years. We had a number of refugees as a MLA in Calgary. I mean, we got 4 or 5. I always brag about it. I mean, that this is and it's growing, and that's the good news.
That's a fantastic example that you're making. And Yasim, thank you for making that point. I do agree. I think it's probably easier for people the younger they are who arrive, and we do appreciate the call. We're going to hear from Jag now, who's on the line in Edmonton. Hello, Jag. What do you think makes a good Canadian citizen?
Hi, can you hear me properly, first of all?
We can.
Yeah, because I'm on Bluetooth, and I just couldn't help but call you guys. I was listening to you on the radio.
We're hearing you, Jag.
Okay, yeah, well, I'll repeat what I just said before. My word for being a good Canadian citizen, be honest. Be honest with whatever you do in life. Pay your taxes, work hard, be honest. Try to integrate yourself into the community. You know what? Most important, first of all, learn the language. Very, very important. Learn the language, learn the local culture, learn what is acceptable, what's not, because obviously we come from a different cultural background. What is acceptable in some societies is totally not acceptable to the other, So try and learn that. Try and understand what Canada stands for. Learn the values. Learn what the guy said before, core values, right?
Yeah.
That's what I think it should be a good Canadian citizen.
Thanks very much, Jag.
Yeah, very, very right. I think obviously learning language, that's one of the elements that makes success. That's part of building social capital. I do speak at my graduation on the Link, and I always bring that question to the newcomers when they graduate from Link classes. I said, just go to the river in downtown. Just imagine there is no building there. Some people, about 100 years ago, they came and they stopped here, and they said they're going to build a city. And those people did the work, and I know they probably worked the hardest. I mean, just imagine. I mean, even for us, it's difficult to imagine that. I always tell them that now we are here to definitely enjoy this city or this country. So we have to ask our question, when we leave, what we're going to leave behind? What kind of footprint we're going to have here? So I think that's very correct. One point I want to make just also about the age. Yes, it is important the age that people come in, but however people come, they bring cultures. Cultures is culture. I mean, all the cultures are beautiful. There are so many things that we can learn from all other cultures. As far as we all go back and look at the core Canadian values and try to behave within that context. And I think people should not be apologizing if I'm Iranian or Afghani or Americans or French, because we all bring different flavor of culture. And I think that is what has made Canada such a wonderful place to be.
I think a lot of people would agree with you about that, Fariborz, and we thank you so much for joining us today.
And thank you very much for creating that conversation.
Fariborz Birjandian, he's the Executive Director of the Calgary Catholic Immigration Society. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Continue the